You can all hear me. Hello, everyone. My name is Ankshita. I'm not from here, of course. I'm from Mauritius, and this is my talk. So the talk's title is When Nostalgia Hacks Back, a forensic autopsy of a Trojanized Flash game. So how many of you were actually addicted with Flash games, or just played Flash games once upon a time? Okay, I see my people here. That's great. That's great. So this talk is for you guys. If, Flash games became irritating after a point, or you were just downloading executables on your computer, because I did that so many times. So this entire analysis is basically just to find out why were those Flash games affecting my PC and basically ruining every PC I had. And eventually I had to use those PCs to get homework done, and which I was never able to do. So there you go. I'm going to move to the next slide. So this is basically just a walkthrough of the presentation. I'm going to tell you why I chose this game specifically and how I downloaded this malicious game. I did one OSINT analysis because now I have some tools that I can use that I did not have back then. We will then go in an in-depth static analysis of the executable file, and then I infect my own VM, which is there. Finally, I will end with a forensic analysis and a dynamic analysis and some IOCs and key takeaways that you can take from this session. So again, hello to you all. This is Ankshita. This is me. I'm a cybersecurity consultant in Mauritius. I've previously worked in a bank. I've previously worked in a SOC, security operations center. Now I'm working for a fintech, and I have presented my work at HackerLU this year, just last week. So HackerLU 2024, the Après Cyber Slope Summit in Utah, US. And then there's the local developers conference in Mauritius. So I'm a bit famous. You can say that. Now, I'm going to go to the story behind this specific game. Now, I used to play Flash games since school. I don't know if you recognize any of these games or if you can actually jot down some of these games, but these were my personal favorite, especially Cake Mania. I was obsessed with that. Okay, so my dad actually bought our first PC in 2010, and that's where, all three of our siblings used to fight who is going to get the turn to be able to spend time to play games and this and that, okay? So this used to be like a huge fight, and eventually my personal favorite were these. My brother was into the zombie games, etc. So now, the game that I'm going to reverse today is the first one. I just gave you, a small hint right there. Are these games, some of these games you recognize or used to play? Yeah. Okay, they're kind of girly, I know. But okay. So, there was something that happened recently. Flash games were actually discontinued in 2017. Basically, they announced it in 2017, but eventually it was to be officially discontinued in 2021. And as soon as that was announced in 2017, and I was still a big Flash games player, I saw my favorite websites disappearing all of a sudden. And it was irritating, but I was not really, the type. I'm a bit lazy, so I was like, let's just download the game on the PC. I don't really have to play it on the website. So that's what I did. And as you can see, this was one specific error that was very common on my computer when I was downloading these executable files. So it was as simple as, just going on Google and typing the cakemania.exe or the Hunters collection games, etc. It was as simple as that. But the problem is that many of these Flash games are actually, or probably were starting to being ejected by malicious code or something like that. I did not quite understand it at the time. All I knew that it was delaying my game time and it was delaying my homework. So it used to piss me off. I was really the type to really, bang screens and stuff. So I broke many phones. I broke many laptops. I'm not going to go into my dark past, but that's there. So, for this specific session, I downloaded the game online, and as you can see, it is available on Big Fish. There are also some more sketchy sites that you will see in this corner. So there's one that is very, free, and it claims as well, it's a secure download. It doesn't activate any, I don't know what, I don't know, basically any malicious malware, etc. So I chose this one because it seemed like the biggest guarantee, right? So it's, this game's name is Hunter's Journey, Tears of the Lake Collection. It was basically supposed to be a mystery game or something that I used to play back then. But now I've gotten a bit smart. I reverse engineer stuff. I've reverse engineered ransomware just last week. So I wanted to do this cautiously. And I think I'm not wrong for that. So I went for an OSINT analysis before I even downloaded the game. The first thing I did was scanning the actual download file on VirusTotal. And this is what the result was. It's basically tagged as adware, Trojan mainly. So basically, these are all the sources that are present over there. Now, many vendors have actually already tagged this as Trojan. So basically, it's highly probable that it is a malware file. Now, that's confirmed. It's a Trojan downloader. It's a Win32 file. So there are different labels which are available on this one. Just to be sure, I went on the sandbox analysis. So I also, put the executable on a hybrid analysis. And basically, this just confirms that it is indeed a Trojan downloader. Okay. Now, that is setting my expectation to another level. Okay. I can expect a small loader that is unpacking on a second stage, persistent artifacts, maybe even network callbacks from this game. And basically, it's just a game. So, all right. Let's get started with the actual presentation, which is the in-depth static analysis. So, for this one, I used a few tools, and I'm going to walk through them. But I say in-depth because attention lies into the detail. And I don't know if you actually ever heard this before, but whenever you actually go through a very big or a threatening malware or ransomware file, it's not really easy to get many details, and it's basically a long road that goes zigzag, and you construct things along the way. So to start collecting artifacts, to start collecting information, you start with the static analysis. That's why I've done it a bit detailed, and I'll tell you what is the difference and the meaning of every one. I start with detected easy. So this is generally, I use malware reverse engineering using my toolkit in Flare VM. So detected easy is actually one of them. So as soon as I had my VM set up, I just basically released the executable into the detected easy die tool, okay? And the first thing I noticed was that it has an entropy level of above 7. Does anyone know what that means? No? Are you guys in cybersecurity? What are you guys? Okay. So basically, a high entropy level means that this file is extremely compressed. It's basically packed within layers. And you can expect maybe a loader, a stub function that is going to decrypt or decompress, and that's when the payload or something is going to drop. Okay. So it's a basically, what do you call that? It's a locked file. Okay. It's there. Now, I went to the disassembly, and as you see, I see gibberish here. I don't really understand any strings whatsoever. That looks like crap, okay? But it's basically data decoded as instructions, which is garbage for me, but eventually it's a huge sign of packing as well, okay? So it's overlaid, encrypted payload, and this is what I see in DIE, okay? Now, I move on to my second tool, which is PStudio. Now, I love using PStudio because it gives me a lot of information, especially along all of these lines. The first thing that I went to was file overview. As you can already see, is that PStudio shows an overlay, and as my earlier entropy level, it's about 6.7 to 705. So, of course, the file is packed, it's encrypted. There's probably a packer, an installer, which is there. Also, there's not really a tiny import table. It's the import table is actually pretty huge. There's close clipboard, copy file, create directory, create process. So all of these are basically used in process creation. So once the file is actually going to be launched, or the game is actually going to be launched, it's also going to launch a bunch of different processes. I go to footprints. So the footprints, as you can already see, this was basically to be matched, or hashes to be matched in the static analysis, in the OSINT analysis back there. So one of these hashes actually matched my VirusTotal analysis. So this is confirmed. It's a Trojan. I also went to file header analysis. Now, what you see over here is a 32-bit executable file. So I know I need to basically use a 32-bit debugger. This also means that this is generally a tactic often used to make reverse engineering harder. So as you can see, there's debug and relocation information that has already been removed from this picture. Okay. I'm going to move to the second one, sections analysis. This one as well shows me the entropy level is above 7. There's a dummy.n data, which is suggesting there's a strong packing. I'm going to move to libraries. Okay. Now, in this one, you see that there are 8 core libraries which are covering file, registry, processes, UI functions. Now, this is not a normal game, as you must already know by now. A game is not supposed to be packed. It's supposed to just have, the game function itself, I would say. It's also not supposed to have a lot of stuff related to registry changes or process creation. But this one is just giving me the impression that the malware has full OS level capability. Okay, so it's not just a game. It's basically a real what do you call that? So a real OS level program that is just layered as a game, okay? So I will go to the imports flagged right now. So generally it's still a bit smaller than you see, but just the red crosses are actually the imports which were flagged. Out of 155 total imports that the file detected, 29 were flagged. And examples were, for example, the registry set value, delete file, write file, shell execute, system parameters info, empty clipboard. So there's some information already indicating me that there's info stealing indicators here. Okay. Also, the pstudio flags functions known for risky and suspicious behavior. So this one is already indicating, for example, process creation, registry changes, deletion, clipboard tampering. Okay. So this one gives me some indication about what the malware is going to do. Now, this slide is actually important because this is something I was not expecting. When you're running a game, you don't actually need admin access, okay? It was weird that I actually got to see this. It has an XML file inside the pstudio that is explicitly requesting request execution level require administrator. So unless and until I have either admin access, or it's probably going to escalate its privilege once I launch this game, it's going to escalate to an admin to be able to launch the malware. So you see, it's a prompt on launch process. Once it becomes an administrator, it is going to be able to modify system files, registry, services. So I might get a few pop-ups as soon as I'm going to, start executing this game. I will go to the properties. So a bit of information about this specific file. So it claims to be from iwin.inc. Do you know about iwin? So it's basically a legitimate iWin streaming games something, if I remember that correctly. But this one is just a facade. Okay, it's written iWin, but it's actually fake or outdated metadata. Mimicking a legitimate publisher. So it's not really iWin, okay? And I will get to know about that much later. I will go through this. Attackers often reuse these brand identifiers from real game installers. So iWin was actually a known Flash game platform earlier. And this makes anyone who's actually downloading this game trust the file. So it's not really iWin. It's basically just cloning this specific publisher, okay? Certificate and signature verification. So this was funny. This was just funny. When you actually generate a certificate, what is the duration that you get? I'm really starting to doubt you guys are from cybersecurity. It's about 1 year. Okay, yes, it's okay. You guys can just take classes after, okay? Right. Okay. So in this image, actually, you see that the certificate and signature verification, it's signed by iWin using the Microsoft ID. But the certificate is valid from October 24, 2025 to October 27. Just 3 days of validity. And generally, a certificate is supposed to be valid for 1 year. Okay. So that's already, and it's marked as expired in pstudio. Okay. So a very short-lived certificate. This is likely either a stolen certificate or some fake signature that was used to evade antivirus trust. Okay, so already, this is something that I might not get while I was launching the process, but interesting to note. And then I went for the overlay signature. Also interesting to note in this slide is this is the only thing this is the only thing flagged as red in the P Studio. As you can see, there's 44% overlay onto this file. So basically, it means that the game is there. I'm not saying the game is not there. There's definitely something going to be launched, but 44% of the game is actually just the malware. It's unrecognizable high entropy data, which is possibly there. Okay, so the signature is unknown. I don't really have, I don't really have any more indication about this, but I'm suspecting that the Trojanized installer has a 44% file ratio. Okay, what that means is 50% of the game. When you download, you only get like 50% of the game and 50% of the malware, approximately. Okay, so basically, half the file size is an overlay blob. I went to Ghidra, finally. So Ghidra, basically, I use for static analysis, but in this case, I was just willing to verify and confirm the imports that I had found in my initial analysis. And as you can see, there are some imports that I already put. Now, these are APIs, which are direct proof that their executable interacts with the window registry. And this is something that rarely a normal game ever needs to do. Why would you ever need to modify system registry stuff or whatsoever? Now, these APIs are direct proof that executable, so that this game executable is interacting with the Windows registry. What that means is basically persistence. It's probably trying to create or edit registry keys for auto run at startup. There could also be something like privilege escalation or environment tampering. A privilege escalation is definitely there, but there could be things like changing the security or policy keys. Okay. And some strong Trojans actually also have cleanup and self-deletion. So they remove their own traces after execution. So we're going to find that in the forensic part. Okay. Now I'm going to move to shell imports. I basically found a bunch of different imports, but I'm just going to go through them one by one. The second is the shell imports. Shell execute is one of the most classic process launching functions. It's often used for payloads and downloaders. So when you have these shell imports, they indicate file manipulation and process execution. So also something that a dropper or a downloader is generally doing on a file. Okay. Now, this was interesting because it has user DLL, so the inter-process interaction. Basically, in Ghidra, you can actually find out all the user imports that this file has. And as you can see, it has about, basically a long list of them. On my own conclusion, basically, the numerous files show potential for clipboard interaction and system shutdown. Many times it used to happen when I was playing the game. I had, so I didn't really have any legitimate Google account or whatsoever, okay? But it was just there, I used to create Google accounts and just, to get access to a specific game, etc. And that Google account I checked many years later, okay? So I used to have this specific one called Happy Pirate, okay? Which is not really a gamer name, I'm sorry. But all of these Google accounts were found in the, so in the exposed credentials website. Okay, I'm forgetting which one it is now, but you used to get that. So basically, all of the interaction that I was doing, and I don't know if it was actually stealing my homework. I hope so, but it didn't really do any. So, but it was definitely stealing my credentials. Luckily, I did not have any bank accounts or credit cards that I was dealing with, but I definitely did have many credentials across Google. One I was using for accessing specific resources, specific games, etc. So it was actually probably stealing that, or some games were probably stealing that. So it was eventually found in the exposed credentials. Now, as you might know, these credentials are actually used to, be supplied on the dark web and be sold, etc. Okay, so this imports actually already show some patterns of spyware and the downloader Trojans. Now, I'm going to go to the next one, string searches. I didn't really get a lot of information because, of course, the malware was packed. I was not really able to search strings which were able to give me a lot of legitimate information. But if you can see in the images above, the installer integrity is checked, has failed. So this is what I get regularly. Basically, it shows that there's a legitimate nullsoft scriptable install system, or NSIS error message, and it's basically embedded in many installers. So all the messages that I'm actually seeing right here are actually mini installers which are probably downloading other stuff from the internet. So as soon as you download the game, it's going to start downloading other small droppers or other small different programs to be able to infect your computer completely. Okay, and many of these might have other different functions. I might not know, but that's there. So it's either embedding or mimicking NSIS wrappers to look trustworthy. And in this case, the combination of this string with registry API imports basically indicates that I'm starting to get infected, and the Trojanized game is eventually just creating backdoors. Okay, so well, this is a very detailed static analysis, and I've just reached this part. I also have to run it on a debugger and do a basic forensic analysis about this. But I'm going to go to the second part, infecting my VM. I don't know why I thought this was important, but as a malware reverse engineer, I wanted to know, a lot of detail about this specific game. So I installed my game and I changed my VM settings. As you can already see, it has some pop-up that is already asking me to start installing. And of course, taking my own VM precautions, I disable the internet, okay, and some other settings. Now, it is actually starting to prompt me for internet settings. It's telling me that the download has failed and it would not be able to download. And basically this was after it already downloaded 1 or 2 specific files, okay? So now I don't know what it's downloading, but it's just basically telling me I cannot start installing the game or playing the game unless I give it internet access, okay? So, from my own conclusion, I think the installer is basically the downloader. Its job is to download the games manager installer.exe, a file that I will see in the debugger afterward, okay? And does that mean that this is malicious? In a way, yes, because it is... this file is already giving me static signals of high entropy overlay, flagged imports, VT detections, embedded URL. So the attempted download is actually the exact behavior that we might expect for the Trojan to start its behavior. I don't really have a title for this slide. As you can see, this is when I already gave it internet access, some bold moves from my side. Okay, so it's starting to download the game. The second slide is where I actually got the game. I saw the game on my VM. And can you guess what is on the third slide? Okay, cybersecurity is still okay. Do you guys have eyes? Okay, some wild guesses somewhere. Okay, you tell me. Can you guess what has actually happened? Yeah, exactly. It's adware, and the game has disappeared. I was not able to play the game. I was not able to start the game. Nothing happened. It just disappeared straight out. And as soon as, basically it was installed, I was able to run the game for like 1 second. My screen became black, and then the game disappeared. And basically a few or more clicks after that, I was getting probably the same issue. Nothing at all to click whatsoever. I tried to run it as admin, another bold move, but I got nothing. It was just the ad as soon as I opened this little window. So the next option for me was to reboot, because I'm a bit crazy. I really wanted to get to, the whole conclusion of it. So I rebooted my VM, okay? And that's when I saw the blue screen of death. This one must be familiar, yeah? This used to happen so many times back in the days when I was actually, playing the game on my PCs, and used to really irritate me, okay? Also ate up a lot of my money in, in repairs and stuff. But basically, this stops with the critical process died. That indicates that a vital Windows system process, usually tied to kernel, registry, boot configuration, was unexpectedly terminated or corrupted. And when followed by automatic repair, as you see in the second image, it means that the OS OS detected severe system-level damage, often from driver, registry, etc. And it might be an attempted self-recovery on the next reboot, but I could not risk that. As soon as it started on the preparing automatic repair, I stopped the VM there itself, okay? So this was actually perfect for me to go for forensic analysis. But so far, I get the indication that basically the malware was just, willing to take control of my machine entirely, and it gave me the blue screen of death, and then it was probably rebooting to get and change all of the systems, all of the admin settings that were by default on the VM, okay? And I had not even basically disabled internet access from the VM. So it was probably downloading a lot of other things, creating backdoors and whatnot, okay? So I shut down the VM there itself. Now comes the next process, dynamic analysis and the key findings. So dynamic analysis is basically just to find out, in a safe way, how to run the executable and how to find stuff that is related to this executable, okay? I'm using the X32 debugger tool for this one. So I'm just going to go through my findings one by one. This is a memory map. So basically, in this one, as soon as I put the executable into the debugger, I see I wanted to see the memory map, and I wanted to find the RWX file. And it didn't have any, so it did not have any executable itself, but basically what the ERWC means that it can actually, I'm just going to explain it again. RWX is read, write, execute, okay, and these are classic signs of unpacked or shell code injection behavior, which modern packers generally have. And the second is ERWC, okay, so pretty similar, but for this, ERWC is basically executable, writable, and copy on write, okay, which is exactly how the malware folders unpack payloads dynamically. And I have a lot of ERWC, but I don't have any executables itself, okay. What that means is that I don't really have any injection as such, okay. ERWC also are their hint that at a staged unpacking process, eventually it is going to inject payloads into the process while the game is launching or while the program is running. But at the right moment, it's at the current moment, I don't really have any specific executable right now. So it's packed. It's going to unpack slowly and slowly once the game starts running. I also saw some specific DLLs, which might be a stealther variant of the classic RWX unpacking technique, and this is also very common with the modern Trojans. So even though I don't really have any read, write, execute functions or DLLs over here, they might actually just be disguised as the ERWC. Okay. Now I see some visible some visible DLLs which are there. The first one, for example, registry control. Second is file manipulation, clipboard, message, Windows, UI, etc. So together, with all of the earlier Ghidra imports that we had analyzed before, it basically concludes that we have loaded all the user and system interfaces libraries into the memory, okay? And this is the memory map. So the malware is dynamically loading all the Windows libraries, as you can already see in this last image. There are also some RW and private ones. So RW is basically reserved and private areas near high memory addresses, and they're generally used for decrypted payloads or in-memory packing. So, right. So basically, I had to run the program to be able to discover a bit more, but this is all I get from a basic from the first image at the memory map. Now, I was starting to put up breakpoints. As you already know, the X32 debugger, you can actually put up some specific breakpoints, and these breakpoints would eventually help me in in assigning which of the registry changes or which of the different functions that will be flagged as soon as the program starts running. So the first one, as you see, it's the process creation. Once the program starts running, I want to see which are the processes being created. The second is identifying the downloader API, for which is going to install the many installers. Okay. The third is the catching allocation and the RW files turning into RX, that is executable files. And there's also lower level protection change catch, which is of very high value generally when you want to catch the IOCs itself. There's also dynamic import changes. So many dynamic imports. Once you have the APIs which are running at once they are the APIs which are at runtime, you actually get dynamic imports which are being created, new files which are being created. So there are also file writes and detection and the persistent registry changes. So I wanted to see all of these things, and these are actually, all of these breakpoints are actually very common in any specific malware or any specific high-level Trojan, okay? And guess what? My breakpoints were hit at almost all of them, okay? Yeah. So this confirms that, of course, it was a Trojan downloader. It was creating a lot of processes. It was actually making a lot of registry changes. I have specific breakpoints, but as you can see in the images, I'm basically hitting all of them. I didn't add all of the images because they're very separate and the file was very large. But in this sample, you basically see that all the breakpoints which are just mentioned over here are there. The virtual alloc one, for example, is worth noticing because, as you can see, it's actually related to the unpacking. Okay, so I'm not going to go into a lot of depth because, or unless actually. Can you see the images a bit clearly, or is it very small? Okay. So can you try to guess, for example, the first breakpoint? Because generally in Xdebugger, the text is supposed to be very small. The first one is just registry API hits. So, for example, the registry open key or registry set value. This sample is actually the reading writing registry, and it's actually used for persistence. Okay, so definitely the malware was persisting even before it actually started. Okay, the second was create process. Actually, there were a lot more, but I've just put a few examples here. The last that I've actually put is it's very small for me. It's a virtual protection one. So in the virtual protection one, as you can see, it's basically classic unpacking and injection behavior. Now, the sequence you typically see in this one is basically that it's hitting all the breakpoints, but I don't really see any network breakpoints, okay? I had put 2 or 3 network breakpoints that would eventually help me discover the direct IOCs or the URLs from which it is actually downloading. But there are 2 probable reasons why it did not hit any network breakpoint. Is first of all that network calls are actually obfuscated, so they're done through raw sockets or custom HTTP implementation. So even though I don't really see any here, it might be possible that it's actually being done through my system itself, through my own PC itself, and not through the system, like the executable here. Another reason is the sample only tries the network after unpacking. So even though it's starting to unpack right now, it's not going to immediately go and contact the URL or the C2 servers over there. The third reason, it checks for internet and aborts downloading as soon as there's no connectivity. So this was the case in my VM. So I did not really connect the internet, and I was seeing the download failed eventually. Okay, so a lack of URL breakpoint doesn't mean that it's not networked. We do need to hit like the unpack payload or the lower level socket APIs. Okay, so Basically, I'm just going to give a summary of the breakpoints that we hit because I could not put all the images. The virtual alloc was used for unpacking the payload. The write process was for writing the real payload. And this is what I wanted to find out. Where is it actually writing it? The virtual protect, as we already see, it's evidence of unpacking and executing. I also saw some resume thread and create remote thread. So this one is for executing remote code. So there was code that was probably not even in this executable, but it was just code injection or hollowing. There's a bunch of processes which are being launched, persistence and configuration writes, and there's also create file in the end. So it's dropping payloads or temporary files which are eventually being deleted. And I find that in autopsy. Okay. So, generally what happens and probably luckily it's not really a live presentation, because I have bad luck with live presentations. My VM stops working or something just halts and I have to keep going for that. But eventually, once you are in the X32 debugger, you actually follow through the specific breakpoints and you follow the dump, okay? So here, what I'm actually analyzing is an unpacked dump, okay? And it's giving me some IOCs which I've actually already extracted after a very long analysis. On the right, you actually see some IOCs, and on the left are actually the unpacked dump itself. So it's giving me some functions, and there was also some hex value which was associated with this. And eventually, I was able to see that there are file names like listgame.exe or game.dat, which actually did not exist prior execution. So I was doing my static analysis. I did not come across these files or these executables. These were something that was just add-on as soon as we started executing. There are also registry keys like the software list game suggesting persistence or configuration storage. So it was able to modify some things as it was running. Okay. The process names, for example, the wam-app.exe or listgame.exe, which appear fake or they were probably hijacked. I don't know. And there were also suspicious domains which I discovered. So I've not added them here because there was something I wanted to confirm. It was actually the domain which was malicious. But there you go. I was able to extract a list of IOCs. So together with these artifacts, I can confirm that the malware did unpack itself in memory. It executed shellcode, and it left some forensic traces for persistence and command and control activity. So we did get to the C2 service information. I'm going to go to my forensic analysis now. Okay. So this is very cool images gallery. It doesn't really mean anything. I just added that because I was not really able to see bits and pieces of the game. But yeah, there you go. The game that I was not even able to launch eventually did show me that I actually had some level, some cool images, etc., and that I would have gotten to know or would have gotten across if I had played the game. But of course, it's not there. I get it on autopsy. So there you go. One thing I really like to do in autopsy, which is actually a forensic tool, and I've only used this, is the timeline analysis. So in timeline, you get to see exactly which process was launched, which executable had been launched, which process was launched afterwards, and which are the different sites, etc., which had been visited. Now, this entire image might be a bit garbage, but as you can see, I see the whole downloader games thing. Okay, so the free. Yeah, this is much clearer. So the download free games thing, okay? And just after that, I can actually see that it goes to a stamp.iwin, okay? And 2 steps forward actually goes to GitHub for I don't know what reason. So I actually did not access GitHub at all on this VM. It was a fresh VM. It was just, configured with internet or no internet to be able to run this specific executable file, okay? And now, because of this, I was able to come across this specific, GitHub links, which probably indicated to specific mini installers which the malware was trying to download. So there was execution to self-deletion as well, because I was not able to find this in the previous analysis that I had. Around the initial infection time, the executable, so the huntersjourney.exe was launched. It created temporary installer-related files inside the app data local and Vim, so iWin and temp. And eventually, after several executables, I see two executables which are interesting to see, the gamesmanager.exe and the iWinInstaller.exe, which both seem legitimate processes just to be able to download the game, etc. Okay, so I see the two GitHub links which are suspicious. I see two executables which are being launched after the game is executed, and basically, once this has happened, continuing from the timeline itself, I can see a bunch of processes which are just launched, okay? And these were the same files marked for deletion because I was not able to see them, okay? The sequence actually coincides with the first registry modifications under the software list game, okay? Suggesting that persistence mechanism was installed before the payload erased the tracks, okay? We also see some resources around here for GitHub. So this was, of course, this was accessed right before and after the game launch. The later entries actually show application and system logs referencing the WA app.exe, consistent with process masquerading. So I have a small hunch that all of this was basically network communication. Okay, so a lot of these mini processes which were just being launched after the stage. So after the infection were just a lot of attempts at connecting the network to the C2 servers. Okay, the timeline is actually a multi-stage infection. I've just put that in four main steps here. The first is execution of the malicious installer, which I did on my own, the payload drop and the configuration file creation, the registry modifications for persistence, and the process injection and masquerading. Okay, so the timeline reveals the Trojan's very short but deliberate activity, executing, persisting, and erasing itself within minutes. So it's a good example of how modern malware really hides its footprints effectively. I went to the deleted files. There were about 2960 system file deletes, and the deleted files were actually recovered from the infected virtual machine. So, of course, my virtual machine had actually suffered a blue screen of death, and I was not really able to see what was where eventually. But this one basically revealed that there were many executables and temporary artifacts which were linked to the Trojan's activity. For example, you would see that there's the app data local.iwin. So this directory was actually quite frequently shown, and I saw some user space installation and self cleanup behavior, especially for the gamesmanager.exe and the iWin installer exe. Okay, there was also firewall exe. So firewall was it actually created a firewall executable file just to be able to fool me, to be able to deactivate my firewall, and then it can actually communicate with the C2 servers. I didn't get to that step because I had already suffered the blue screen of death on my VM. Okay, but generally this is extremely high tampering behavior with your own system because it's also changing legitimate firewall behavior. So I'm going to move to the next slides. The top 4 suspicious artifacts that I was able to recover from Autopsy were these. So gamesmanager.exe. Its primary dropper was that it was executed from app data. It triggered the unpacking and the process creation, and probably also downloaded some secondary payloads. The firewall, it was just a masqueraded binary, so it's pretending to be a Windows component, but it's not responsible for any network communication or privilege escalation. So it is responsible for any network communication or privilege escalation. And the 2 last ones were just part of the infection chain. So basically they were to be able to repeatedly launch the malicious downloader to maintain infection. And they would seem legitimate processes just playing along with the game, but that was not that. Some IOCs and takeaways. So I'm actually at almost the end of my presentation. There were a bunch of IOCs that I was actually able to recover from this analysis. Now, first of all are the file names and dropped artifacts. There's the listgame.exe, which was a main unpacked payload that I got into the memory dump. There was a game.dat file. It was a configuration file or encrypted file resource. There was also, so this exe, the last exe, gamesmanager.exe or iWinstaller, was deleted installers and droppers. So once the game had launched itself, it had actually downloaded the mini installers, it would eventually delete the game manager or iWinstaller and firewall. And this was found in autopsy. I also found some registry keys, which were modified under run and app paths. The processes observed, as you can already see, there was one related with spawn process post unpacking, or that is the payload. The other masquerading as Windows update to be able to avoid detection. And then there was the network and domains and network indicators. So eventually the domains that I was able to find was girlsforgames.frescagames.com or .site. And the last one was host games downloader for free. Both of them are extremely suspicious. If you come across these, please don't download your games on that, okay? I was playing I think I was playing on Girls for Games sometime, between 2010 and 2013, but I don't know. It must have just corrupted my childhood. There you go. So there are also some suspicious connections that were initiated with WinHTTP.dll and the URL mon.dll. So these were files that I was trying to find in Ghidra, but I was not able to because the folder was, the executable file was packed. And eventually I found those through the debugger and then also in autopsy. And well, there you go. These were the ones responsible for the network communication, and that would eventually launch the firewall.exe. Okay? So the conclusion with this is that they're cross-correlating static, dynamic, and forensic findings, and this gives us a consistent infection chain. Okay? The Trojan unpacked itself in memory, executed payloads, it deleted traces, and maintained persistence through registry modifications and disguise processes. I'm gonna go to the next slide. So the main key takeaways from this analysis is that nostalgia is a threat vendor. So if you come across, I don't know, if you are missing your specific Flash games or whatsoever, just try to not download it yourself as an executable. Something I did. Because I'm a lazy person and I'm very impatient. But after some research, I found there was a specific Flash game site that you can get your Flash games from, and you don't actually have to download them yourself. And kudos to them, but I don't really remember where they are. So that's there. Multi-stage infection. So the dropper, this specific dropper was unpacked code in memory. It had injected payloads, it had erased traces. There was anti-forensic behavior. So this is actually quite common for many malware files, for many Trojans. Deleted binaries, registry keys aligned with self-cleanup routines. It's very common, but you can actually use tools much more than what I've used. This was just to be able to get a very pure, benign idea of what malware is actually like. And also I wanted to execute it myself. In Flare VM, you cannot do that because it's very secure. The VM itself is very secure. So this is why I took this specific step. There's also memory forensics. So only the unpacked dump revealed the true IOCs and true behavior. This is generally not common, and it's not very easy to get to the dump. So minimum ways to find the dump, but in XDebugger just worked fine. Okay, and finally, so security message is that even trusted-looking entertainment software can act as a stealth delivery mechanism. We live in an age where cybersecurity is just revolving, and basically threats are evolving on another level. So maybe, this was just for a game, but it could happen for any basic thing that is out there. So pushing QR codes that you might find on, walls around the city, etc. Just don't scan them and stuff. Well, this is not a security awareness class, but yeah. You also have IoT apps now, which, luckily in Mauritius, you don't really have a lot of IoT apps, okay? But if you do have IoTs here and you have a specific app to be able to control that IoT, etc., I've heard that it's very malicious, so don't download them on your device itself. Try to control things through the website and stuff. I don't know how IoT really works, so, well. But basically, this investigation demonstrates how even a harmless-looking game installer can deploy multi-stage malware, okay? And how combining static, dynamic, and forensic methods, I was able to expose the entire full kill chain. Well, this is it. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, that was my question. My mic was not on. It's fine. They have a long day too. Can we have an applause for her? Yes. Thank you. Are there any questions? I'm scared, so I don't want to ask any questions. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, there's a question. Cool.
Hi, thank you for the talk. My question is, what is the main reason why this malware was created? Was it to disrupt, or was it to gather information, or?
You're talking about the masquerading firewall executable, right? Yeah. I'm suspecting that, first of all, it was to evade detection. So even though once the malware is unpacking, your Windows agent or your, so anything that is installed in your Windows system, it's supposed to detect it, okay? But since it is firewall.exe, it's basically going to communicate with your system to tell it that it's not, okay? And it's just legitimate process. That was the first masquerading. The other thing that I suspect for the firewall.exe was that it was trying to get administrator access. So it was also the process or the executable that was trying to escalate privilege. That was my own suspicion. I was not able to confirm that, but definitely the firewall evasion. That was the masquerading.
Okay, second question.
Yes.
Were you able to stop the malware and play the game?
That's a good question. Well, if it's this game, then yes. Of course, it was very difficult because you're not really able to find, I think, Google has gotten smarter. We're not really having any active malware files which are just lying around as games. But I wanted to download the cakemania.exe, which is also there. And that is, I don't know if you know it, but the game actually has so many stages. And from the process or some research that I've done, it has levels, okay? You move from one level, you do 10 games, and then you move to the other level, and there are 7 levels like that, okay? And there was one malware which had some malware peaks which were installed on each level, okay? So it's not even going to unpack. It's going to unpack as you move, as you get promoted in the game, okay? So I wanted to do that. I was not able to solve it, but this one was easy because it's just a mystery game. I hope it answers your question.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes.
Thank you for your talk. I was wondering, how much time does it take you to do this kind of forensic, typically?
Yeah. Sorry, you're asking
how much time does it take for you to do these kinds of forensics?
Oh, so even this forensic, I would not say that it's very full-fledged, but in autopsy, you basically have to take the VM image, the ISO image that is where you're running the malware, and you take an image and you upload that. And it takes some time depending on how big the VM size is, okay? So for me, it took about 10 minutes, I think 10 to 15 minutes to be able to ingest the entire information. And then, of course, once it's there, then you can just use the forensic, so the tool itself to be able to generate reports, etc. I had a forensic autopsy report generated for this specific malware, and it took about 5 minutes. So it really depends on the size. But then the VM it just had the game file itself. It did not have anything else. If you have one VM loaded with tools and the other things, it might take some more time. Okay.
Hands. Of course, in the back. Oh, I'm going to get my step goal today. It's okay.
Since you're running this in a VM and you did give it internet access, would there be benefits to do any live traffic analysis? Like running packet sniffers, Wiresharks to see what it does underwater?
Yeah. I really wanted to do the traffic analysis. It's actually very interesting. One option that I might suggest to you, if you are actually ever running the real malware itself on the VM, is so basically you can set up a fake internet, okay? So set up the fake iNet or iSIM, and then you can actually use Wireshark to be able to see which are the C2 servers that it's connecting to. So I wanted to do traffic analysis. I didn't think it was necessary because because I was able to extract the IOCs from the dumps itself, but it would have been very interesting. There's also another thing that I did not mention in this presentation. So yeah, I had the blue screen of death, but there was also some C2 communication that had already been present. So I was actually able to get traces of that in autopsy, because it does give you the web communication and it does give you the clear or deleted web files, web cache. So I was able to recover that, and that's also where I got the last IOC about the game domain. I hope it answers your question. Okay.
Thank you. I was wondering, how would an antivirus solution respond to this specific type of malware, since it's trying to hide itself?
Yeah, you should be happy that I think advanced antivirus systems are actually able to detect that, because I had downloaded the malware itself on my own system and it blocked it twice or thrice. Okay, I had to really tamper my own Windows Defender, disable all the stuff, just to be able to run this. Okay, so I think this kind of malware is easy to detect, and it was actually easy to detect and remove from my VM, but if you also have like an EDR software that is installed, or an advanced firewall system that is installed on your computer, you should be okay. You should be fine. Okay. Any more questions? Okay.
So many questions.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question. Is it possible to use sandboxing to prevent this infect your computer before you play this game or download it to your system?
Sorry, you want me to send you the infected VM?
No, I mean, is it possible to use Sandbox to run this game before you download it to your system?
Yes, you're asking me if you can actually scan the malware or the file itself, the game itself, before you download it. Yeah, that's the OSINT part that I actually explained. So I was able to download the compressed file. So I put it in a zip file, and I was just uploading the zip file to Online Analysis, Sandboxes, and the VirusTotal to be able to get if the file is legitimate or not. And of course, my aim here was that it would be flagged, or it should be flagged. That's when I would proceed to the analysis. But in your case, of course, if it does, then please don't. Okay.
Thank you.
But if you want the infected VM, I still have it. I could just give it as a Halloween gift.
Nice. Other questions? Yes.
Great presentation.
Okay.
You mentioned that the ransomware is getting advanced nowadays with games and other executables. Is your investigation techniques also getting advanced with the tools and the way you approach the problem?
So this is not the way that I would approach a ransomware. This was just a game malware, and I had some indication on how to extract it and on how to basically do the analysis for this one. But if I'm actually going for a ransomware, I would use a Flare VM. I just did that last week, but my ransomware investigation was actually around Flare VM and around other tools. Ransomware is extremely complex because it's really packed in layers. I was working with a sample called Tesla Crypt. If you know, it's a crypto ransomware file. And it was, basically it had a payload, it had a ransom node, and it had like three different main functions which I had to execute. So it's different. I think your toolkit would be different, but I think Flare VM works just fine. You have basically all the tools that you would need. And I do use a separate toolkit myself, but this was done for Windows. I use it for Linux, okay? But yeah, you can ask for my toolkit or just approach me on LinkedIn if you need that. Okay?
Thank you.
Sure. Any more questions? Okay. Okay, at this point, I'm just going to send you guys the infected VM. You have all the answers there.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I was wondering, after doing the analysis, would you say that the malware is very stealthy or not?
If the malware is, sorry?
stealthy?
Yeah, it is stealthy. It's definitely stealthy because if I did not go through the autopsy or the forensic analysis or even the debugger part, I would actually not know that it's actually going to create a firewall executable or it's going to create some specific different files. So it's definitely stealthy. And stealthy also why? Because of course it's stealing your information and it's stealing your credentials. So everything that you type on your keyboard, it has a clipboard sharing thing or function which is going to steal all the information out there. So it acts stealthy because it has legitimate processes or legitimate executables that are being dropped, but it's still going to steal your information. So I hope that is what you mean by stealthy.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, maybe one last question. Okay, cool. Sorry.
Hi. During your presentation, you showed that there was a code to a GitLab repository. Did you research more what is on that repository? Was it the second stage of the malware?
Yes, it was the second stage where it was unpacked. So the GitHub repository was actually something called, I think if I'm not wrong, the software.least.games, and list is written in French, so it's odd. But actually, I saw a bunch of other games that you could just download from the GitHub repository itself, and I did not know that someone actually created that. So of course, on GitHub, credentials or people are anonymous, but someone has actually just created that repo to be able to download specific executable files that you can just download and then play on your laptop. Okay, so and it's also labeled like Flash or old games or something. Okay, so it's I did not investigate much further into that, but it was there. It was a second part, second stage.
Okay, thanks. And very quick second question, sorry.
Go ahead.
This was an example for one specific game, but do you think there is some automated way to apply all these changes to any executable? Pretty much like a packer that do anything.
Yeah, actually, you can actually apply that for many other different, so I've done some malware reverse engineering for some time now, and I've dealt with payloads and packers and stuff. This was actually just a type of packer that you would expect, a Trojan, and it's well packed. It has some specific functions that it's going to execute. So you can actually apply this analysis or this type of analysis on other different malware as well. Depends, of course, I would suggest you to do your own OSINT analysis. That way you can expect what you might be finding out. Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
You were so not sorry. Just kidding. Thank you so much.